The battlefield erupted in a dazzling display of light and destruction. Sleek, armored figures darted across the alien landscape, their weapons emitting brilliant blue-white beams that cut through the air. Hovering vehicles zipped between towering structures, exchanging fire with unseen enemies. This was the future of warfare, where humanity's greatest weapon was also its most dangerous. In the heart of this chaos, a Marine's gloved hand deftly activated a glowing blue core in their rifle. The weapon hummed to life, pulsing with barely contained power. As the Marine took aim, the air itself seemed to crackle with energy. Then, in a blinding flash, the world exploded into white light. This was the world of the Antimatter Marines. Thousands of miles away from the front lines, in a high-tech briefing room aboard the Starship Horizon, Captain Sarah Chen stood before her squad. At 35, Chen was a veteran of countless battles, her experience etched into her face in the form of a long scar across her left cheek. Her stern gaze swept over the assembled soldiers of Epsilon Squad. "All right, Epsilon Squad. Listen up." Chen's voice cut through the quiet hum of the ship's systems. With a swift motion of her hand, she manipulated the holographic display in front of her. The image shifted, revealing a red planet hovering in the air before them. "Mars Colony Omega is under threat," Chen continued, her voice grave. "Intel suggests approximate attack force will hit within 12 hours. Mike Torres, the squad's 28-year-old tech specialist, leaned forward in his seat. The cybernetic implants at his temples glinted in the room's soft light. "What's our antimatter supply looking like, Captain?" he asked, his fingers already twitching, as if itching to get to work. Chen's response was curt. "Full stocks, Torres. But remember." Before she could finish, Zara Dillon, the 30-year-old weapons expert, chimed in. Her prosthetic right arm whirred softly as she gestured. "One wrong move, and we light up brighter than a supernova." The gravity of Dillon's words hung in the air for a moment. Then, from the back of the room, a nervous voice piped up. Is it always this intense?" All eyes turned to Alex Novak, the squad's newest member. At 22, his face still held a softness that contrasted sharply with the hardened veterans around him. A ripple of chuckles passed through the squad at his question. Chen's expression softened slightly as she regarded the rookie. "Welcome to the Antimatter Marines, kid," she said, a hint of a smile tugging at her lips. "Intensity is our bread and butter." But the moment of levity passed quickly. Chen turned back to the hologram, her face once again a mask of determination. "Now, let's talk strategy," she said, her voice hardening. "Those colonists are counting on us." As Chen began to outline the mission parameters, each member of Epsilon Squad felt the familiar mix of anticipation and dread settling in their stomachs. They were humanity's elite, wielding the most powerful and dangerous weapons ever created. The fate of Mars Colony Omega, and perhaps the entire war, rested on their shoulders. In 30 minutes, they would be dropping into hell. But for the Antimatter Marines, it was just another day on the job. The armory of the Horizon hummed with activity as Epsilon Squad prepared for their mission. Captain Chen stood at the center, overseeing the preparations with a critical eye. "Torres, run a final check on the antimatter cores," she ordered. "Dillon, make sure everyone's weapons are calibrated correctly. We can't afford any misfires on this one." As the squad bustled around her, Chen's gaze fell on Novak. The rookie was standing in front of his armor locker, his hands shaking slightly as he reached for the high-tech suit within. Chen approached him, her footsteps silent on the metal floor. "First drop, Novak." The young Marine jumped slightly, then straightened up. "Yes, Captain. I mean, I've trained, but nothing prepares you for the real thing," Chen finished for him. She placed a hand on his shoulder. "Listen, kid. That suit you're about to put on? It's the most advanced piece of technology humanity has ever created. It'll keep you alive in hard vacuum, protect you from radiation, and amplify your strength tenfold." Novak nodded, his eyes wide as he took in the sleek, black armor. Chen's voice hardened. "But it's also powered by enough antimatter to vaporize a small city. Treat it with respect, follow your training, and you'll be fine. Hesitate and you'll put the whole squad at risk. Understand?" "Yes," Captain Novak replied, his voice steadier now. As Chen turned away, Torres approached, his face grim. "Captain, we've got a problem. One of the antimatter cores is showing fluctuations. It's within acceptable parameters, but acceptable isn't good enough when we're dealing with antimatter." Chen finished. She cursed under her breath. "How long to swap it out?" Torres shook his head. "We don't have a spare. We'd have to synthesize a new one, and that would take hours." Chen's mind raced, weighing the risks. Every moment they delayed put the Mars colony in greater danger, but going in with faulty equipment could be catastrophic. After a moment of tense silence, she made her decision. "We go with what we have. Torres, you monitor that core personally. At the first sign of trouble, you eject it. Clear?" "Crystal," Captain Torres nodded, though his face showed his unease. As the final preparations were made, Chen addressed her squad one last time. "Epsilon, this is what we trained for. Those colonists on Mars are counting on us. We go in fast, we hit hard, and we come back alive. Any questions?" The squad stood silent, faces set with determination. "Good," Chen said. "Suit up." The next few minutes were a symphony of whirring servos and clicking locks as the Antimatter Marines donned their advanced armor. Each suit was a masterpiece of engineering, its sleek black surface hiding layers of complex technology and protective plating. As the final checks were completed, Chen led her squad to the Horizon's launch bay. Their dropship waited, its antimatter drive pulsing with barely contained energy. Epsilon squad filed into the craft, each Marine securing themselves in the acceleration couches. As the bay doors opened, revealing the rust-red surface of Mars below, Chen felt the familiar surge of adrenaline. "Epsilon squad, ready for drop," she reported over the comm. "Godspeed," Epsilon, came the reply from Horizon's bridge. "Give em hell." With a burst of blinding light, the dropship's antimatter drive ignited. In a heartbeat, they were hurtling towards the Martian surface, racing against time to save the colony below. As the heat of atmospheric entry built around them, Chen allowed herself one last thought in the world of the Antimatter Marines. Every mission could be their last, but if this was to be their final drop, they would make it one for the history books. The dropship screamed through the thin Martian atmosphere, its hull glowing red-hot from the friction. Inside, Epsilon squad braced against the intense G-forces of their descent. Captain Chen's eyes were fixed on the tactical display, watching as they rapidly closed in on their target. 30 seconds to touchdown, the pilot's voice crackled over the comm. "Brace for." The rest of the warning was drowned out by a deafening explosion. The dropship lurched violently, alarms blaring throughout the cabin. "We're hit," Torres yelled, his fingers flying over his arm-mounted console. "Proximate anti-aircraft fire. Our starboard engine is gone." Chen's mind raced. "Can we still land?" The pilot's response was terse. "Barely. It's going to be rough." "Epsilon, prepare for hot drop," Chen ordered. "Novak, stick close to Dillon." The next few moments were chaos. The dropship spun wildly, fighting against Mars gravity and the ongoing barrage from below. With a bone-jarring impact, they hit the Martian surface, skidding across the red dust in a shower of sparks and debris. As the craft ground to a halt, Chen was already moving. "Go, go, go," she shouted, hitting the emergency hatch release. Epsilon squad poured out of the crippled dropship, their antimatter-powered armor, allowing them to move with incredible speed despite the lower Martian gravity. They spread out in a defensive formation, weapons at the ready. The scene that greeted them was one of utter devastation. Mars Colony Omega, once a shining beacon of human perseverance, was now a battlefield. The massive dome that protected the settlement was cracked in several places, emergency force fields flickering as they struggled to maintain atmospheric integrity. In the distance, Proximan ships hung in the orange sky, raining destruction upon the colony. "Torres," Sitrep Chen demanded as she scanned the horizon. "Colonial defense grid is at 30% capacity," Torres reported, his cybernetic implants interfacing directly with the colony's systems. "They can't hold out much longer. Wait, I'm picking up a distress signal from the central hub. It's Governor Reyes. Chen made a split-second decision. Dillon, take Novak and secure that dropship. Salvage what you can. Torres, you're with me. We're going for the governor. As Dillon and Novak moved back towards their crashed transport, Chen and Torres charged towards the heart of the colony. Their antimatter-powered armor allowed them to cover ground at an astonishing rate, leaping over debris and scaling damaged structures with ease. They were halfway to the central hub when the first wave of Proximan ground forces appeared. The alien soldiers were tall, spindly creatures encased in exosuits that protected them from the Martian environment. Contact front, Chen yelled, diving behind a fallen column. She brought her antimatter rifle to bear, its core humming with barely contained energy. Torres took up position beside her, his own weapon ready. I count at least 20, Captain. More incoming. Chen nodded grimly. Then let's thin the herd. On my mark now. The air lit up with brilliant flashes as the antimatter Marines opened fire. Each shot from their weapons released a minute amount of antimatter, creating localized explosions of unimaginable power. The first volley tore through the Proximan ranks, vaporizing several alien soldiers outright. But the enemy responded in kind, their own energy weapons scorching the Martian landscape around Chen and Torres. A near miss caused Torres' armor to spark ominously. Captain, he shouted over the din of battle. That hit destabilized my antimatter core. I'm venting plasma. Chen's blood ran cold. A breached antimatter core could result in an explosion that would wipe out half the colony. Eject it, now. Torres didn't hesitate. With a swift motion, he ejected the damaged core from his suit. The small, glowing cylinder arced through the air, landing amidst a group of advancing Proximan soldiers. The resulting explosion was blinding. When Chen's visor cleared, a massive crater had replaced a significant portion of the alien force. Good thinking, Torres, Chen said, allowing herself a grim smile. Now let's move. The governor needs our help, and we've got a colony to save. As they pushed forward, deeper into the heart of the besieged Mars colony Omega, Chen couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The Proximan attack was too well coordinated, too precise. There was more going on here than a simple raid. But those were questions for later. Right now, all that mattered was the mission, and Epsilon Squad never failed a mission. With renewed determination, Captain Sarah Chen led the charge into the chaos of battle, the fate of Mars hanging in the balance. Captain Chen and Torres fought their way through the wreckage-strewn streets of Mars colony Omega, each step bringing them closer to the central hub. The sounds of battle echoed all around them, punctuated by the distinctive whine of antimatter weapons and the alien screeches of Proximan energy guns. Captain, incoming transmission from Dillon, Torres called out as they took cover behind a twisted mass of metal that was once a transport vehicle. Chen activated her comm. Report, Dillon. We've secured the dropship. Captain Dillon's voice crackled through, the sound of weapons fire in the background. Managed to salvage some antimatter cores and med supplies. But we've got a problem. Novak's suit took a hit, and his antimatter regulator is glitching. Chen swore under her breath. A malfunctioning regulator could lead to a catastrophic overload. Can you stabilize it? Negative, Dillon replied. We need Torres. Chen looked at her tech specialist, seeing the conflict in his eyes. They were so close to the governor, but... Go, Chen decided. Get Novak stable. I'll push on to the central hub. Torres nodded, relief evident on his face. Yes, Captain. Be careful. As Torres sprinted back towards the crash site, Chen took a deep breath and surveyed the path ahead. The central hub loomed before her, its once gleaming surface now scarred and pitted from the Proximan assault. She was about to move when her suit's sensors blared a warning. A massive energy signature was approaching fast from above. Chen looked up just in time to see a Proximan drop pod hurtling towards her position. With inhuman speed granted by her antimatter-powered armor, Chen leapt away as the pod crashed into the Martian soil. The impact sent tremors through the ground, kicking up a cloud of red dust. As the dust settled, the pod's hatches burst open. From within emerged a towering figure, easily twice the size of a regular Proximan soldier. Its armor was adorned with glowing sigils, and in its hands it wielded a massive energy axe. "Well, shit," Chen muttered, recognizing the creature from intel briefings. A Proximan war priest, the elite of their forces. The war priest's compound eyes fixed on Chen, and it let out a bone-chilling shriek before charging forward with surprising speed for its size. Chen rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding the creature's first swing. Her antimatter rifle came up, spitting out a burst of energy that would have vaporized a normal soldier. But the war priest's shields flared, absorbing the blast. "Okay, big guy," Chen growled, ejecting her rifle's spent antimatter core and slapping in a fresh one. "Let's dance." What followed was a deadly game of cat and mouse through the ruins of the colony. Chen used her superior mobility to stay just out of the war priest's reach, peppering it with antimatter blasts that slowly but surely wore down its shields. But she was running out of time. Her suit's power levels were dropping, and she could hear the sounds of more Proximan forces approaching. As the war priest charged in for another attack, Chen made a desperate gamble. She waited until the last possible second, then activated her suit's emergency thrust. The sudden burst of speed carried her up and over the alien's head. In midair, Chen reached down and grabbed the regulator from her suit's antimatter core. Alarms blared in her helmet as her armor began to overload. With all her strength, she hurled the destabilizing core at the war priest. The alien, confused by her maneuver, didn't react in time. The resulting explosion was catastrophic. Chen was thrown backwards, her armor's emergency systems barely protecting her from the blast. When her vision cleared, the war priest was gone, along with a significant portion of the surrounding area. Her suit was offline, antimatter core depleted. Groaning, Chen pushed herself to her feet. She was battered, her armor was dead weight, but she was alive, and the central hub was just ahead. "Epsilon Squad, this is Chen," she rasped into her emergency comm. "I'm proceeding to extract the governor. Could use some backup." As she limped towards her objective, Captain Sarah Chen allowed herself a grim smile. Just another day in the life of an antimatter marine. Little did she know, the true challenge was yet to come, waiting for her within the depths of the central hub. Captain Chen stumbled through the twisted corridors of the central hub, her dead armor weighing her down. Emergency lights flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. The sounds of distant fighting echoed through the structure, a grim reminder of the battle raging outside. Governor Reyes Chen called out, her voice hoarse. "This is Captain Chen of the Antimatter Marines. Respond if you can hear me." A weak voice responded from further down the corridor. "Here, we're in here." Chen quickened her pace, ignoring the pain shooting through her body. She rounded a corner and found herself facing a sealed blast door. Through a small window, she could see Governor Reyes and a group of colonial officials huddled inside. "Stand back," Chen ordered, reaching for the manual override. With a groan of protesting metal, the door slid open. Governor Reyes, a middle-aged woman with streaks of gray in her dark hair, rushed forward. "Thank God you're here, Captain. We thought we were done for." Chen nodded grimly. "We're not out of this yet, Governor." My team, as she was cut off by a burst of static from her comm. "Captain, it was Torres," his voice urgent. "We've got a situation. Novak's suit, we can't stabilize it. The antimatter core is going critical." Chen's blood ran cold. An antimatter explosion of that magnitude could vaporize what was left of the colony. "Can you eject the core?" "Negative," Torres replied, panic edging into his voice. "The ejection system is fried. We're trying to the transmission cut off abruptly." "Damn it," Chen swore, turning to the governor. "We need to evacuate now. Is there a way out of here that doesn't involve going back through the battlefield?" Reyes nodded, her face pale. "There's a maintenance tunnel that leads to the emergency shuttles." "But Captain, what about your team?" Chen's jaw clenched. "I'll get them out. You focus on getting these people to safety." As Reyes began ushering the colonists towards the escape route, Chen forced her battered body into motion, heading back the way she came. She had to reach her team, had to find a way to stop the impending disaster. She was halfway back to the entrance when the building shook violently. Through a shattered window, Chen saw a massive Proximan warship descending from the orange Martian sky, its weapons trained on the colony. "Oh, come on," Chen muttered. "As if we didn't have enough problems." Suddenly, her calm crackled to life again. It was Dillon. "Captain, we've got Novak's suit somewhat stable, but it won't last. We're en route to your position." "Negative," Chen shouted. "Get to the emergency shuttles. I'll meet you there." She could almost hear Dillon's hesitation. "But Captain..." "That's an order," Marine Chen cut her off. "Get our people out of here." As she signed off, Chen realized she was out of options. There was only one play left, and it was a long shot at best. She needed to get to that Proximan warship. With renewed determination, Captain Sarah Chen of the Antimatter Marines charged back into the chaotic Martian battlefield. Her armor was dead, her weapons depleted, but she still had one asset left: the unstable antimatter core in Novak's suit. If she could get that core onto the Proximan ship, she might just be able to save the colony and her team. It was a suicide mission, but then again, every drop could be an Antimatter Marine's last. As she ran, dodging energy blasts and leaping over debris, Chen allowed herself a grim smile. One way or another, this fight was about to end with one hell of a bang. Captain Chen's lungs burned as she sprinted across the Martian landscape, her dead armor clanking with each step. The massive Proximan warship loomed overhead, its shadow engulfing the devastated colony. "Dillon." Status report, Chen barked into her comm. "We're at the shuttles," Captain Dillon responded, her voice strained. "But Novak's core is becoming more unstable by the second. We can't take off with him like this." Chen gritted her teeth. "Hold position. I'm coming to you." As she ran, a plan began to form in her mind. It was risky, borderline insane, but it was their only shot. She reached the shuttle bay just as another Proximan assault wave hit. Energy blasts sizzled through the air, forcing Chen to dive for cover. Captain Torres called out, waving from behind a makeshift barricade. Chen sprinted towards him, sliding into cover as a blast scorched the ground where she had been standing. "Sitrep," Chen demanded, her eyes scanning the chaotic scene. Torres pointed to a shuttle where Dillon was struggling to hold down a thrashing Novak. "His core's going to blow any minute. We can't stabilize it, can't eject it." Chen nodded grimly. "Then we use it." Captain Torres looked at her, confusion evident on his face. "That warship up there is about to glass this entire colony," Chen explained quickly. "But if we can get Novak's unstable core on board..." Understanding dawned in Torres' eyes. "We could take out the whole ship." "Exactly," Chen confirmed. "But we need a way up there fast." Torres' cybernetic implants glowed as he processed the problem. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. "The colony's atmospheric scrubbers. They have emergency launch capabilities for maintenance, if we can repurpose one." "Do it," Chen ordered. She turned to Dillon, who had approached during their conversation. "Get everyone else on the shuttles and ready for immediate evac. Dillon, you're with me and Torres." As Torres worked to modify the scrubber pod, Chen and Dillon managed to secure the barely conscious Novak. His armor was vibrating ominously, the antimatter core within pulsing with unstable energy. Captain Novak gasped, his face pale with pain and fear. "I'm sorry, I..." "Save it," Marine Chen cut him off, her voice firm but not unkind. "You're about to save this whole damn colony. Make peace with that." Minutes later, which felt like hours under the continuous Proximan assault, Torres called out, "It's ready." They loaded Novak into the modified scrubber pod. It was a tight fit, barely large enough for 2 people. Chen turned to her team. "Dillon, get everyone out of here. Torres, you're our best shot at interfacing with the alien tech. You're coming with me." Dillon looked like she wanted to argue, but a glance at the descending warship silenced her protests. "It's been an honor. "Captain," she said instead, snapping a salute. Chen nodded, allowing herself a small smile. "Give EM hell, Marine." With that, Chen and Torres squeezed into the pod with Novak. The hatch sealed with a hiss, and for a moment, everything was eerily quiet. Then, with a bone-jarring roar, the repurposed scrubber launched towards the Proximan warship. The makeshift vessel shuddered violently as it pierced the Martian atmosphere, the hull glowing red-hot. As they approached the massive alien ship, Chen turned to Torres. "Whatever happens, it's been a privilege serving with you." Torres managed a grim smile. "Likewise, Captain. Let's show these Proximan scum what happens when they mess with Earth." With that, their pod slammed into the hull of the warship, and all hell broke loose. The final battle for Mars Colony Omega was about to reach its explosive conclusion, with the fate of the entire settlement resting on the shoulders of 3 Antimatter Marines and 1 very unstable core. The impact sent shockwaves through the makeshift pod, threatening to tear it apart. Alarms blared as the hull breached, exposing them to the ship's atmosphere. Chen's ears popped painfully as the pressure equalized. "Torres!" Status Chen yelled over the cacophony of screeching metal and blaring alarms. Torres' fingers flew over his arm console, his cybernetic implants glowing intensely. "We're in, but barely. The pod systems are fried. We've got maybe 5 minutes before this whole thing depressurizes completely." Chen nodded grimly, turning to Novak. The young Marine was pale, his armor pulsing with an ominous, ever-brightening light. "Hang in there, soldier. We're almost done." With a grunt of effort, Chen forced open the pod's damaged hatch. They spilled out into a vast, alien corridor. The architecture was all wrong, organic curves mixed with sharp, crystalline structures. Pulsing veins of energy ran along the walls, floor, and ceiling. "We need to find the ship's core," Chen said, helping Torres drag Novak out of the pod. "Any ideas?" Torres' implants flickered as he interfaced with the alien systems. "I'm detecting a massive energy signature about 500 meters that way," he gestured down the corridor. "Has to be the core." They had barely taken 2 steps when alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Harsh, guttural sounds, clearly the Proximan language, echoed through hidden speakers. "I'm guessing that's not a welcome message," Chen muttered. As if in response, a squad of Proximan soldiers rounded the corner ahead, their insectoid features contorting in what might have been surprise. It didn't last long. Energy weapons materialized in their hands, powering up with an ominous hum. "Torres, get Novak to the core," Chen shouted, diving for cover behind a protruding piece of alien architecture. "I'll hold them off." Torres nodded, hefting Novak over his shoulder in a fireman's carry. As he sprinted down the corridor, Chen emerged from cover, her dead armor's servos protesting as she pushed it to its limits. She charged the Proximan squad, catching them off guard with her reckless advance. Her antimatter rifle was long gone, but the armor's enhanced strength was still operational. She slammed into the first alien with bone-crushing force, sending it flying into its comrades. Chen snatched up a fallen Proximan weapon, its unfamiliar weight awkward in her hands. She squeezed what she hoped was the trigger, and a burst of searing energy erupted from the barrel, cutting down 2 more aliens. But there were too many. Energy blasts peppered her position, slowly but surely wearing down her armor's integrity. A lucky shot caught her in the leg, and Chen went down hard. As the Proximans closed in for the kill, a massive explosion rocked the ship. Chen's comm crackled to life. "Captain," it was Torres. "We've reached the core, but we're pinned down. Novak's suit is about to blow. We need to." The transmission cut off abruptly. Chen's blood ran cold. This was it. Do or die time. With a primal roar, Captain Sarah Chen of the Antimatter Marines surged to her feet. Ignoring the searing pain in her leg, she charged once more into the Proximan ranks. She was a whirlwind of destruction, using every dirty trick and brutal tactic she'd learned in a lifetime of warfare. As the last alien fell, Chen stumbled towards the core, leaving a trail of blood and broken armor in her wake. She rounded a corner to find Torres desperately trying to hold off another Proximan squad, while Novak convulsed on the floor, his armor now blindingly bright. Chen took in the scene in an instant. The ship's core, a massive, pulsating orb of energy, floated in the center of the chamber. Novak's unstable antimatter core could destroy it, and the ship along with it. But someone would need to manually override the core's safeguards. A suicide mission. Without hesitation, Chen staggered forward. "Torres," she shouted, "get Novak out of here. Emergency evac now." Torres' eyes widened as he realized what she intended. "Captain, no. There has to be another way." Chen managed a grim smile. "That's an order, Marine. It's been an honor." Before Torres could protest further, Chen scooped up Novak and, with the last of her strength, hurled him at the ship's core. In the same motion, she slammed her fist down on Novak's suit controls, overriding the safeguards. The world went white. Chen's last thought, as antimatter met matter in a cataclysmic reaction, was of Earth and the hope that her sacrifice would give humanity a fighting chance. Then, everything vanished in a blinding flash of light and energy. The Proximan warship and the brave antimatter Marine who had given everything to destroy it disappeared from the Martian sky in an explosion that would be visible from Earth. But in the rapidly expanding sphere of destruction, a single escape pod hurtled towards the safety of Mars Colony Omega, carrying with it the legacy of Captain Sarah Chen and the future of the Antimatter Marines. The battle was over, but the war was far from won. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope you loved it. Please remember to subscribe if you did like it so you can see more videos like this. And please give us a like and a comment too. I'll see you in the next one.